At 70 years old, Bruce Willis has become a symbol of something far bigger than Hollywood. Once the man who defined the modern action hero, he is now locked in a battle that no one can win. His family has revealed that he can no longer speak, read, or even walk on his own. For millions of fans, it was devastating news. But for those who followed his story closely, it was also a tragic full circle. Because long before illness took him away, Hollywood itself had already tried to erase Bruce Willis. His rebellion against the machine began in the early 90s, and the punishment lasted decades. What happened to Bruce Willis wasn't just one bad movie or one medical condition. It was a war, and he fought it until the very end. To understand the tragedy, you have to start with the triumph. Bruce wasn't born into fame. He worked blue-collar jobs, bounced around small-town America, and even tended bar in New York before getting his break. That break came with Moonlighting in the mid-1980s, a quirky TV show where Willis's sarcastic charm lit up the screen. Suddenly, the bartender with a stutter was America's hottest leading man. And then came Die Hard in 1988. John McClane wasn't just another action hero, he was different. He wasn't a perfect machine like Schwarzenegger or Stallone. He was vulnerable, funny, reckless, and relatable. Audiences connected with him instantly. The film made $140 million worldwide, turned Willis into a superstar overnight, and gave Hollywood its most iconic action catchphrase.
Yippee-ki-yay, mother. Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
For a moment, Bruce Willis was untouchable. By 1990, he was earning $15 to $20 million per movie. He was the face every studio wanted. But what made him rise so quickly would also become the reason for his downfall. Because unlike most stars, Bruce didn't just want to act. He wanted control. And in Hollywood, that was the ultimate crime. May 1991. Hudson Hawk hit theaters. On paper, it should have been harmless. An offbeat comedy about a cat burglar who sings while he works. But behind the scenes, it was a different story. This wasn't just another studio project. It was Bruce's dream movie, based on an idea he'd cooked up with his friend Robert Kraft years earlier. Bruce didn't just star in it. He co-wrote the story. He handpicked the director, Michael Lehman. He brought in his own screenwriter, Daniel Waters, to reshape the script. And once filming started in Italy, Bruce took over everything. He changed dialogue on the fly. He gave direction to other actors. He made decisions that should have belonged to the director. The budget ballooned from $42 million to over $70 million. Joel Silver, the legendary producer who had made hundreds of millions with Willis on Die Hard, was furious but powerless to stop him. To the studios, it wasn't just about money. It was about power. Bruce Willis wasn't supposed to act like a producer, or worse, like a boss. He was supposed to stay in his lane. When the movie bombed spectacularly, grossing just $7.9 million on opening weekend, the fallout wasn't limited to box office numbers. Critics called it unspeakably awful and colossally ill-conceived. But the real damage wasn't in the reviews. It was in the whispers. The word spread. Bruce Willis was difficult. In Hollywood, that label is lethal. The punishment wasn't loud. It was quiet, deliberate, and devastating. Phone calls that used to pour in started drying up. Projects he should have been offered went to other actors. Meetings got canceled. Invitations vanished. By late 1991, the same man who had been one of the most bankable stars in Hollywood was suddenly persona non grata. The industry wasn't just turning its back. It was sending a message. Step out of line, and we erase you. Even Die Hard wasn't safe. When pre-production began for the third film, Willis discovered he wasn't invited back at first. The franchise that had made him a global superstar was ready to move on without him. It wasn't just about box office. It was about humiliation. Hollywood was teaching him a lesson. You don't just lose the job. You lose everything. But Bruce wasn't the type to apologize. "I don't concern myself with box office," he told reporters defiantly. "I concern myself with being an interesting actor." It was exactly what the machine didn't want to hear. The 1990s became a tug of war for Bruce Willis. On one hand, He landed unforgettable roles in Pulp Fiction, 12 Monkeys, and The Fifth Element, movies that revived his credibility and showed his versatility. On the other, he made flops like Striking Distance and Color of Night, which critics savaged. The biggest disaster came in 1997 with Disney's Broadway brawler. What should have been a lighthearted romantic comedy turned into a nightmare. Bruce reportedly fired the director, cinematographer, costume designer, even his... By the 2000s, Bruce Willis had slipped into a strange new reality. Instead of headlining blockbusters, he was starring in cheap direct-to-video films known in the industry as geyser teasers. The formula was cynical and simple. Producers would pay Bruce around $2 million for just 2 days of work. They'd shoot all his scenes in one location, usually a warehouse or an office, and splice them into a low-budget action movie. His face would dominate the poster, but his actual screen time might be less than 15 minutes. Audiences felt cheated, but by then the distributors already had their money. Behind these films was producer Randall Emmett, who had built an empire on exploiting aging stars. And Bruce, once the sharp-witted improviser, was struggling. On set, he needed cue cards for simple dialogue. He seemed confused, even lost. Directors quietly admitted they had to cut his roles down because he couldn't handle the work. In 2022, the Golden Raspberry Awards even created a special category: Worst Performance by Bruce Willis in a 2021 Movie. It was meant as a joke, but the reality wasn't funny. Something was terribly wrong. March 2022, Bruce's family released a statement. He had been diagnosed with aphasia, a condition that affects speech and comprehension. It explained everything: the cue cards, the short filming schedules, the vacant expressions. For fans, it was heartbreaking. For Hollywood, it raised darker questions. How many people had known? How many had profited while watching him decline? The Golden Raspberries quickly retracted their category, apologizing once it became clear Bruce had been struggling with a medical condition. But the damage to his legacy was already done. His final years on screen would be remembered not for Die Hard or The Sixth Sense, but for a string of soulless movies that should never have been made. For almost a year, fans hoped aphasia was the full story. But in February 2023, the family released another statement. Bruce had been diagnosed with frontotemporal dementia, or FTD. Unlike Alzheimer's, which primarily attacks memory, FTD destroys personality, behavior, and language first. There is no cure. The average life expectancy is 7 to 13 years. For an actor whose career was built on communication and charisma, it was the cruelest possible fate. His public appearances became rarer, and when they did happen, the difference was shocking. Frail, confused, struggling to recognize people, Bruce Willis was no longer the sharp, fast-talking hero the world remembered. By 2025, reports confirmed the worst. Bruce could no longer speak, read, or walk. The man who once performed his own stunts, who fought terrorists barefoot through broken glass, now required help with the simplest daily tasks. Hollywood hadn't broken him. His own mind had. In the end, Bruce Willis's story isn't just about movies. It's about power, rebellion, and the cruelty of time. Hollywood tried to erase him after Hudson Hawk. The machine punished him for daring to take control. But Bruce kept fighting. He clawed his way back with hits, endured humiliations, and left behind some of the most iconic performances of all time. What Hollywood couldn't erase, dementia did. And yet, maybe that isn't the whole story. Because while Bruce Willis may no longer speak, the roles he played still do. John McClane crawling barefoot through air ducts. Malcolm Crowe whispering, "I see dead people." Corbin Dallas saving the universe. Those moments live on, untouched by disease, stronger than Hollywood politics, immune to time itself. At 70, Bruce Willis is no longer the action hero who never gave up. But in the memories of millions, he will always be exactly that.